Sing unto Yahweh a new song, and his praise to the ends of the earth. Ye that go down to the sea, and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof, let the wilderness and the cities thereof lift up their voice. The villages that Kedar doth inhabit, let the inhabitants of the rocks sing. Let them shout from the top of the mountains. Let them give glory to Yahweh and declare his praise in the islands. Yahweh shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry a roar. He shall prevail against his enemies. I have a long time holden my peace. I have been still.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Genesis. I'm not going to read the whole chapter up to the point where we're picking up. I'm just going to sort of verbally recap it quickly. Remember, chapter 41 is the chapter where Pharaoh has his dreams. The two dreams, the one of the lean cattle, the 7 lean cattle, devouring the 7 fat cattle, and the 7 lean stalks of grain, devouring the blasted grain, I should say, rather. Devouring the good ones, the fat ones. And this signifying 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. And a great famine it would be. And in viewing this, in experiencing this with Joseph, the Pharaoh was quite impressed and appointed him to be, as Joseph suggested, someone who would manage all this. That you need to find someone to manage the plenty while it was there to save up for the time that was to come. And also that God had sent this vision to Pharaoh, to reveal to him what he was going to do. And so Pharaoh called him named Zaphnath-Paneah, meaning the God, speaks and he lives, he sees and he lives. I think it's speak, because of the dream having an interpretation. Yeah, the God speaks and he lives. And again, notice, it's whatever. He has his conceptualization. It's not necessarily Elohim or Yahweh. He just thinks God, of his gods. But, what more? We can only relate to God in terms of what we've already learned. That's why people struggle so much with the Trinity, because it's beyond your learned experience. You've never experienced anything like God in this world. Except God himself, of course, But among the things of the nature, there is very little in nature that you could compare God to as far as his nature. You could talk about it in terms of his handiwork, in terms of his character, but not in terms of his nature. Okay, so let's begin reading at 46. Joseph has been appointed, and he's been given a wife, and now he's 30 years old. 46. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field which was round about every city laid he up in the same city. And Joseph gathered the corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the year of famine came. And Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, notice Asenath, his name sounds not Zaphnath-Paneah. She's Asenath. Sounds close. Anyways, daughter of the priest of On, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, which she bare unto them. Verse 51. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, he hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands. But in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto the Egyptians, said unto all the Egyptians, I got screwed up with the next verse with sold the Egyptians. Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came unto Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was sore in all lands. Let's continue reading, because we may get into this next chapter. We're going to cover a lot of verses probably in the next few weeks. Now when Joseph saw that there was corn in Egypt, now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do you look one upon another? What are you going to do? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, whence come ye? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said unto him, nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said, thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. And Joseph said unto them, that is it that I spake unto you, saying, ye are spies. Hereby shall ye be proved. That is it that I spake unto you. Hereby shall ye be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, and your words may be proved, whether there are any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies. And he put them all together into ward 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the 3rd day, this do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me. So shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. And they said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul, when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child, and ye would not hear? Wherefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by interpreter. And he turned himself about from them, and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore to every man's money, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provision for the way. And thus did he unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn, and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money. For behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God hath done to us? And they came unto Jacob their father, unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell them, saying, The man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly unto us. My screen's black. And took us for spies of the country. And we said unto them, We are true men. We are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, Hereby shall I know that you are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine to your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said unto them, Me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take away Benjamin? All these things are against me. And Reuben spake to his father, saying, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him unto thee again. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then ye shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. And the story goes on. It's quite a long section of scripture. You know, the details suddenly just goes, just with the Abraham's stories were very sketchy. Isaac's somewhat so. But this story is very detailed. Now, Joseph has been imbued with the authority of Pharaoh, having the ring and the signet. So he's 30 years old. That's quite a young time to be elevated. But it's interesting that Jesus himself. There's a lot of interesting parallels you may have noticed as we went through to Christ. The 7 years famine, the 7 years. There's 7 years of tribulation predicted for to bring the full end of things. Christ was about 30 years old when he began his ministry. And Joseph here enters into his, at 30, he is ascended as high as he ever will, but about as high as anyone could hope to, without being born royalty. So he goes out from Pharaoh, and he goes and he gathered all the food of the 7 years. He basically threw a tax. This is tax and save, and later on they sell it back to the people. And laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, he laid up in the same. Meaning there's food around us. He didn't try to transport food all over the kingdom. He stored the food near where it was grown. So he would build granaries in all the different cities around Egypt, whatever the number of them were. There were a number of them, right? And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much until he left numbering. It was so, like, he was counting, and then I suppose he lost track, which is a little odd. I mean, like, but I guess at some point it was like, well, we've got a lot. You can still keep track of things without doing a tally. He's still storing grain away but like, as far as the running total, after a while, it's just like, well, we're going to go forward with the plan. You could see how you could lose track. And unto Joseph, even with, writing and all that, papyrus or whatever, I don't know if they had papyrus at this point yet. So before the famine came, he had 2 sons through Asenath, Potiphera, priest of On. And I haven't talked much about On and what god of the Egyptians there was, because I don't know. And it's something I've never even been in a study where someone explained that, what On was. But, it's something you could look into if you're interested. I don't see any bearing here. Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God hath made me forget all my toil. Manasseh means forgetfulness. And also Ephraim. Ephraim is actually a name that's plural. The im at the end of his name, it renders that word a plural word. And that's why fruitful, plural, means really fruitful. They would make things plural oftentimes to emphasize. Like Egypt, it's Mitzrayim in the Hebrew. And I'm not trying to be all showy off here, or Mitzrayim, whatever. But it's got the im at the end, and it means double defense. And this, blessing multiplied, defense multiplied, because Egypt had it was well situated to defend itself. That's why that kingdom has been there for thousands of years, thousands of years. What was I gonna say? Okay, thousand years. Double defense. Ephraim means exceedingly fruitful. Fruitful in the plural. And that meant, as I said. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land were ended. So the 7 years came to an end. It's interesting to think about now the famine begins. He's almost 40 now, The 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. And so all the land is famished. People cry to Pharaoh for bread, and he says, well, go to Joseph. He's the one I appointed to take care of this, and this is just as he said, and I'm sure he's very pleased. He doesn't even really come up because of, there's no need to talk about scenes with him and Pharaoh. It'd just be boring. Oh, yes, sir, we're taking care of everything. So he opened the storehouses, sold to them, the famine was sore, and all the countries round about came to because the famine was sore in all lands. As it wouldn't surprise me if this coincided with the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations. There was definitely considered to be part of what destroyed it was a massive drought that lasted for years and took down all these great civilizations that were all kind of in existence and interconnected at that time. If you listen to there's some really interesting talks online. Listen to some historians talk about that Bronze Age civilization. It's really interesting. Okay. And you can feel it in Abraham's time. Like Abraham, it feels like Abraham and Isaac and Jacob live in this civilized world. But then you get to the period of the Judges after the Israelites come out of Egypt later, after the collapse of civilization, it seems like everything is in chaos. Which it is. Actually, there was chaos. All right. So his 10 brothers go down to buy. So anyways, so now Jacob hears that there's corn in Egypt, and he says, why are you looking at each other? Like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? The solution isn't here. I've heard that there's corn in Egypt. Get down there and buy us corn that we can live and not die. Get some. And again, I haven't talked about it, but corn is not what we consider corn, or we assume it isn't. It's a funny thing. In that late Bronze Age, like I talked about, we find, or has been found, vessels in Egypt containing corn, which was supposedly not known to the old world until Columbus's day. That's because there had been trade in ancient times between the old and the new world, as they are called now. And this is something that goes way, way, way back. It's somewhat controversial with historians, but I certainly buy into it because I have much more. Because humans are very intelligent, but the idea that everything we did got recorded, that someone bothered to write a record down of it, is a bit too presumptuous. A lot of things have been going on we don't know about. But there are certainly evidence of some intercontinental trade happening before Columbus, long before. The longer before Columbus, the more evidence you're going to have of it, probably. Anyways, but generally corn means grain of any kind. I don't know if it means a specific kind, but whatever. Not like we would think, like with some taxonomical exact Latin phrase that would tell us what genus and species we're talking about. Whatever. It means grain, right? So go buy grain that we can live and not die. Now Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt, so they didn't leave Joseph. But Benjamin, he was sent behind. And Jacob sent him not with his brother, lest mischief befall him. That makes me wonder. Just the way it says that. Did he have any suspicion? I don't think so. So the sons of Israel come to buy corn among those that came. Notice how Jacob's name is used somewhat interchangeably, For the famine was in the land of Canaan. Joseph was governor of the land. He was told all the people of the land, Joseph's brethren came, bow down. So they bow down just like in his dream. Remember, he had the dream of the sheaves all bowing. Your sheaves all bound down before my sheaves. The 10 sheaves. And then even the sun and the moon and the sun and the moon bowed down. The mother and father, it says. I'm not sure what that means because his mother's dead. But it could mean Leah or it could mean, I don't know. They was presumed to mean his father and mother, though, like I said, his mother was dead. But there is Leah, and she would be the mother of the household. Even if Joseph's mother is dead, he's still, I don't know. I assume her sister would have had some authority over him. So he remembers the dreams too and says, "You're spies." He immediately takes this hostile thing. Because they didn't know him. Right? They don't know who he is. They don't recognize him. They think he's dead. Or whatever, long gone, slaving away in some salt pit, no doubt. And they forget what a little brain he is. And they forget how well he does at everything. They just assume that the evil they did was enough to destroy him. Or at least they, put him away forever. They figure he's just gone. They don't see, they maybe they think they might see him scrubbing a floor somewhere. But not in charge of all Egypt. So the disconnect is it's very easy to see. Well, one, he's been gone at least a decade. And probably, I forgot if I mentioned and I gotta go back, and I hate doing this. I almost feel like, it's nice to have my computer back. It's nice to be live streaming, by the way. I'm just thinking, what was the word I wanted to see? 17. Am I out of my mind? Was he 17 years old or what? 37. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Okay, he was 17 when he was sold. Okay. So then, that means, by the time that means like, he was sold at 17. He doesn't get to be this important thing till he's 30. That means he had quite a bit of time down in Egypt. Quite a bit of time. Some with Potiphar, maybe initially his wife did not have interest in a 17-year-old boy. She maybe not that kind. But as he's managing the house 3-4 years later, one could see how he would become quite appealing, especially as he began to be successful. He's not just a slave boy. She didn't just sleep with slave boys. This slave was managing the house and impressive and attractive and all that, especially as he matures into a man. So anyways, so he was that age. Now we'll get back to what I was talking about. So, that's a long time. I readily admit there are a few, unless, whatever, if you look at me at 17 and look at me at 37, there was a significant difference. It could be, and especially you consider the fact that when they saw him, he was in his coat of many colors. Now he's dressed up like a full Egyptian, no doubt. And that we presume that he has taken on their customs, not their religion necessarily, but their customs. And so they come, and he was governor. He was sold, so they had to come and bow themselves before him. And we already read that. So he calls them spies. It says to see the nakedness of the land. It's funny when I remember when I was a kid reading Genesis, and I never really, the nakedness part always kind of threw me off a bit. Because, like, being naked, I'm like, well, I know, how would knowing you're naked be very important? And this is, right here, the idiom is sort of in this context, we understand the idiom better. The nakedness of the land means the vulnerability of the land. The places where it may be, where it's weak, where they perhaps might attack and, take over everything. And so when man knows he's naked, what it means is he sees his flaws. It's conscience. Man sees his flaws. He sees his openings. He sees himself exposed to the judgment of God, or to the depredations of the heathen. In this case, for the nation to be naked and open, it is vulnerable to attack from outside. And when we are naked and open, we are naked and open before him with whom we have to do. And we should know that already. Our vulnerability should be clear. It's only through foolish self-deceit that we think we're not naked, that we think we can cover. Just like Adam and Eve sewing fig aprons. The only thing our clothing and fig aprons hide from, the only thing the only one that you hide from is other people. Can't hide from God. But from other people, we attempt to conceal our vulnerabilities. But there's a converse thing. Why is that? How does that relate to the knowledge of good and evil? Well, when you know good and evil, one, you see yourself as you are. You see the good and the evil. You see the vulnerabilities and the strengths. And you also, and that knowledge in yourself also gives you the ability to see other people's vulnerabilities and strengths and to be able to exploit them. Or to be able to help them. Because it's the knowledge of good and evil. It's not all evil. But in knowing so, you immediately know your sinfulness because you see your nakedness, you see your vulnerabilities, you see your weaknesses and your failings and your flaws with your eyes open. And you die because you are convicted. You see all, you don't unconsciously just walk through the world like without a conscience, not knowing whether you do good or bad. You know. It's a balloon popping. You know whether you've done good or bad because you have eyes to see the nakedness of your own actions. So, to see the nakedness of the land, there you go. There's that analogy of nakedness, and it's very clearly here demonstrated to be vulnerabilities. That's what it means, idiomatically speaking. I believe the word is idiomatic. I'm going to find that out. I'm going to check that because I think I've been using it right. I just like to check once in a while because the problem is I'll check up things like that. I just want to look up idiom. I want to make sure I get idiom right. A group of words established by use of having meaning not deductible from those of the individual words. Yeah, sure. Because it's like you can't just look at the word nakedness and the meaning of that word does not necessarily immediately get you to vulnerable. But here's a good example, right? Rain cats and dogs, see the light. Again, you can deduce, maybe not from the definition, but from the context, what see the light means. It can be deduced, but not from the individual words. You know what I mean? We understand rain cats and dogs in terms of context, but not in terms of just the words. What does it mean? It literally means cats and dogs coming down from the sky. I said I've tried to carefully point out anytime I could symbolic or idiomatic expressions in the Bible to demonstrate that there's just the idea that you should take everything literally is just garbage. Garbage. So, I don't take everything literally. We understand idioms and stuff, but the days of Genesis are not idiomatic. They're not symbolic. They're not. By what authority do you know these things? By what authority do you know these things? Tell me. It's the authority of the traditions which you follow. That's all. The Bible itself does not contain any such restraints as far as you got to think of it this way. No. So, no, we are not spies. We've come to buy food. We are true men. We're all one man's sons. We are true men. I want to see what that word is. What's that in Hebrew? It's so fun to be able to just go look and be able to scroll up and down real fast. So I have to pick a phone up and punch in things. The phone is kind of great, honestly, in a certain way. I kind of like it, but I don't regret waiting. Well, I need chapter, wrong chapter. I need to be chapter 2, 22, 42. True Men, 11. I mean, I'm not expecting anything earth-shattering definitionally, but let's just see. Our true men, look at this, wait a second. Why is this not, why am I not getting my usual, oh, I see why I don't have this up, and then this on top of it. Okay. So, true men, look at, they put it in all caps for some reason. We are, notice the words, are is in brackets and men is in brackets, because it's not in the original translation. Some King James will have those brackets or parentheses, or they'll put it in italics. That means that's a place where the translators are letting you know this is not specifically pointing to a Hebrew word. We had to supply these words in order to make the sentence make sense. Sometimes this is absolutely acceptable and correct. Though, like I said, I kind of like to have to supply my own. Because they could just say, we are true. But the R is even like, we true. What's it mean? Cain. So thus. Oh, great. Interesting. A primitive adverb. An adjective meaning right, variable, or honest. Upright. Right, usually in the right thing. Interesting. Veritable or true. Which definition are we? Plural. Concrete, honest. That's here. Okay, well, whatever. So, again, it's interesting to me. Wow, there's so much. This word comes up. Wow, this word's got a lot of lexicon stuff. Do you see all that? That's all. There's the Strong's exhaustive concordance definition. From a word that means to set upright, hence just, but usually as an adverb or conjunction, rightly or so. Right. So it's used as a conjunction like that, but it also properly means to set upright or to be upright. Okay. Well, look at all this lexical stuff. Man, this word must come up. How much does it come up, though? I don't see a lot of Englishmen's. Well, that's a lot. 767 occurrences. Where is it? Look at that. 767. No wonder it didn't give them all. They use it a lot. Wow. Oh, like, look at this. Genesis 1:7. I want to bring us a little closer. There we go. A little narrower. A little narrower. There we go. Right in there. And it was so. And it was so. And it was so. And it was so. That's all the same word here. Anyways, it very much depends on context. You don't always get too carried away with your Strong's definitions because ultimately they all depend on context. Not very many words are much more dependent on context than they are on the definition, especially when you have a word like that that's used in such a broad application. Sometimes you have words that are used very little and they have very specific meaning, but other words, while having the same general meaning, have a different force when used in different ways. You know what I mean? And it was so, it's very different from we are true men. It's a very different usage, a different form of the word too, to be true. And you can, if you get into that, I suppose you'd have more to say about it than I do. Name my Lord. I wonder what the word Lord is there, by the way. It's probably just Adonai, Adonim or something. No, Adonim, that's plural. Name my Lord. I'm just curious. Adon, yeah. Very similar to what we call God, Adonai, the Lord. That's why the Lord is not really God's name. Neither is God. But God is like a categorical distinction, and the Lord is more of a role type distinction. And it's just put in place of, rather than saying his name, we give him a title of respect, which is nothing wrong with that. God goes by many titles. But if you want to call on him and have him affect your life, call on him by the name of Jesus. Jesus called Christ because in him is all the power of God unto salvation, and you will find it there. Okay, name my Lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We're all men's, you come to see the naked. He plays hard with them, hardball. Does not, nope, you come to see, no, we're from the land of Canaan, the youngest, one is not. And then so he gives them this thing where he says, okay, by the life of Pharaoh, he's going to swear, you shall not go forth thence, except your younger brother come hither. He kind of initially wants to be like, I'm going to put you all in prison and then send one of you out to go get your brother. But then after putting them in ward 3 days, he comes back the third day and gives them a little more easy of a job. He says, "This do and live, for I fear God." Meaning, if you are a true man, I don't want to do you any harm. I suspect you of being spies, quote unquote. But I fear God. So if you do what I say, nothing will go badly, but you will live. If you are true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. You go, carry corn and family to your houses, but bring your youngest brother to me. So shall your words be verified, and you shall not die. And this they did. And they did so. So, I think what he's saying is they agreed to do this. They let one of their brethren be bound. And then they said to another, they agreed to do this. And also, as this might be part of the discussion, we are guilty concerning our brother. And then we saw the anguish of his soul. They looked into his eyes. And they saw his anguish. And they sold him anyways, because they hated him so. When he besought us and we would not hear. So they think their guilty consciences are now coming down on them, and they do not feel at all good about this. They think like this is what we got coming. This distress is pretty much what's the surprise? They feel the guilt. We are verily guilty. We are verily guilty considering our brother. We are truly guilty. And so they are convicted. And Reuben says to them, the older brother still trying to be the oldest brother. Didn't I speak to you, saying, do not sin against the child, and you would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. It's like you can't just do whatever you want. Maybe Reuben kind of has a clue about this. Reuben, having erred and gone up to his father's bed and being in that position and all that, he's trying to be the leader. But he knows, it's like if we killed him, they assume that he's dead, sort of like, sold him off. I mean, they could have been sold to a galley or something. Who knows? They didn't make any they didn't make any make sure you give him a cushy slavery. Here's some extra money to make sure he doesn't land too hard. No, they just send him off. Who cares? They knew not that Joseph understood them because he spoke to them by interpreter. He didn't even speak to them. He had an interpreter interpret to them, so they thought he can't hear at all. He didn't understand what we're saying. And he turned himself about from them and wept. Probably because, if I think about them acknowledging their guilt and regretting it, not just for not just because, this bad stuff, because the bad stuff is not coming on them as a direct and obvious consequence. Now, they see it as whatever people would call it, karma or God's judgment. To me, karma is that makes no sense. Who's going to enforce that? Someone's got to decide. The idea that there's just some force of nature judging good and evil that is impersonal to me is, absurd. But, I'm sure people think things I believe are absurd, but whatever. Yeah, but I just don't see it. So he weeps. And I said, I think because he was somewhat, obviously hearing them mutter about him, talking about him. He's got to touch something that hasn't been touched in, it would be 13th, 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. Assuming it's the first year of the famine. Probably not, right? But over 20 years. So again, he communed with them and took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. He chose Simeon. I wonder why he chose Simeon. Simeon, though, is one of the most violent of the brethren. He was one of the ones who went into that city and slew all the men while they were tender with the. It was Simeon and Levi, right? Hot-headed. And so Joseph chooses him out. Maybe he was one of the ones foremost in throwing him in the pit. I tend to think so. I tend to think Simeon was probably Joseph's least favorite of the brethren. He thought, if I got to keep one back and make him, put him in prison, and if they perchance should decide to abandon him, well, let's make it Simeon. Not Judah or Reuben, who tried to save my life. I don't know about Judah, actually. What was Judah's role? Judah had a sort of a... I don't know if he had much of a role. Gosh, it goes so far back. Oh, that's not far. Yeah, this is like such a long... no, this is a city by Hornum. Oh, no, we gotta go to the previous chapter. So we see Reuben. Yeah, it's mostly just Reuben's the only one who gets a mention. Or Judah was the one who suggests, what profit if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Again, like I said, stereotypes. Come on, Joseph. Stop thinking about profits, Judah. I'm just kidding. I'm sort of kidding, but I think it's funny. Because, like I said, there are people who will deny the Jews are the Jews. And why? Well, because they'll say, well, they have all these characteristics. I'm like, really? Are those not like the characteristics of their forefathers? I mean, are they not clever, and don't they look after their own? And a lot of that's cultural, honestly. Though I think there's got to be some dimension of, we have some ingrained. I gotta think that something of. I've always. Not always, but I mean, I've come to think in terms of, not everything isn't nature, everything isn't nurture. It's a combination, right? That's obvious. That life is not just what you were born as. That has a lot to do with what you can become, but it does not determine what you become. It puts some limits on what you can become, because of we all have limits. And we're going to be constrained by them. So back to where we were. So he binds Simeon, his favorite brother. I just think it makes sense that Simeon would be chosen. He was at the front with the sword. I'm sure he was at the front tossing Joseph down in the pit. Just his way. Simeon has a lot of zeal, a lot of fire. Okay, so he weeps, he communes with them, takes Simeon, binds him in front of them. Then he commands to fill their sacks with corn and to restore every man's money to his sack and give them provision for the way. And thus he did unto them. He gave them their money back too. So they laded their asses and they got on their way back to Canaan. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender, that means feed his ass. In the end, he espied his money. For behold, it was in the sack's mouth. His money is right there in the sack. And he said to his brethren, my money is restored. We don't know which one. And lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them. Because that's a bad sign. Something's up. You know what I mean? Like, if the Egyptians aren't doing this to us in a way, like trying to, we're being jacked with maybe a little bit here. I mean, I don't know. Or, this is of God, and that makes it even scarier. Because what is the Lord doing to us? And so their heart failed them. Because it was just like, oh, man, what are we going to do? We go back. How are we going to go back having the money not bought the grain properly. They thought they bought it. They were afraid. What is this that God hath done unto us? Again, they don't necessarily think that the money is miraculously there, but that God's hand is in it. And this is some sort of punishment from God. The God's hand is in it, no doubt. But it's not a punishment. It's that, well, they are being punished in the near term. They are suffering in the near term, somewhat mental anguish. They ought to for what they did to their brother. No doubt. They ought to suffer mental anguish. When you do wrong, you ought to feel like garbage about it. That's all, to some degree. Now, knowing Christ and his forgiveness, we need to trust that also to respect it. And understand that, no matter how vile your sins are, they are washed away. Christ's blood is powerful enough to wash any sins away. It says, except for, what does it say? All transgressions and sins which men commit shall be forgiven to them, but whoso blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, it shall never be forgiven them. I've done a couple studies on that before. And again, like I said, whatever. I have a whole study on it on oraclesofgod.org. I'm not going to make it a study because it's really off topic. I'm not going to make it an issue here. Hold on a second. Reset my headphones there. There we go. Okay, so, all right. So then they came to Jacob and explained to him what happened. And he spoke, the man of the country, the man who's Lord of the land, spake roughly unto us and took us for spies. Yee. And when we told him we're true men, no spies, he said, when we started telling him about our family history, and they told him all this information about themselves. So that, again, when, that would be an important thing. If you want to establish you're not a spy, you got to establish your actual identity. It'd be unlikely that 12 brothers would be chosen for a spy group, And that there's such a specific story. Then there's a youngest brother that's with their father. And so he said, well, okay, leave one of your brothers. Oh, how did I get back here? Oh, no, they're telling the story. Okay. Threw me off for a second. I'm like, well, we already did this. That's part of the problem is because they have to repeat the story to Jacob, and they repeat it for us. And he said, bring your youngest brother to me, then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. You're true and honest. You're not messing with me here. So we will deliver you your brother, and you shall traffic in the land. You're going to be able to trade here. Things will go well for you. I will fully rescind my suspicion that you are spies and allow you to buy and sell as you please. So they emptied their sacks, and behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sacks. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. It wasn't just the one bundle of money. They didn't all check their sacks right away. They waited until they went home, and then they checked them, and then they found out there was money in every sack. Jacob's not happy. He says, you've bereaved me of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not. He's counting Simeon as dead. You will take Benjamin away? All these things are against me. I think what he's saying, I'm against all these things. Usually how we say it. I'm against this. You want to take Benjamin away? No way. It's all contrary to me. All contrary to my will. Contrary to what I want. It's against me. It's just said weird. Like I said, we don't say it like that. We just say, like I said. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons. What is this weird things to say? Kill my 2 sons. Kill your 2 grandchildren. It's a bit grandiose, I suppose. That's how it strikes me. It's like, come on, a little melodramatic. But, I'm not sure Jacob would be satisfied. But Reuben is indicating to his father his sincerity, that he understands the gravity of this situation. That he wants him to believe. Notice Reuben speaks up a lot because he's the oldest. Unfortunately, because he went to his father's bed, it will never be as it could have been for him. But he says, he offers up his 2 sons. I will bring him back. He's saying, I'll do whatever it takes. That's why when he offers his sons, he's saying, I'm giving you something so precious so you can have the confidence that I will return with Benjamin, just like I don't want my sons dead. And he said, no, my son shall not go with you. For his brother is dead and he is left alone. Again, he's thinking of Rachel, who's gone. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, and then you shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. I'm going to go down. I'm going to be unhappy all the way to my death. I'm going to be so, you're going to, basically you're going to put me, because people die of broken hearts. You can have enough distress and anguish that affects your health, and even it can kill you. Mental anguish can be extremely devastating to the body. And not that we don't exaggerate or use a little hyperbole sometimes when describing it, no doubt, that one could say that is what's going on here. But, okay. So now we're at 43. The thing is, I haven't read it yet, and by the time I get done reading it, we're going to be out of time. So instead of reading this chapter to go into it, and then we won't have any opportunity to do it like I did the other time where I just read the chapter. I'm like, oh, I guess we're out of time. I don't want to just fill up time. So we're going to stop here, even though it's a little bit of a short study. 50 minutes, just because we've covered a lot of grounds and we're in a new chapter. Not that it's much of a change, but we need to read it. Or maybe I could do a partial thing here. We got 10 minutes or less. Let's see. No, this is very connected. Basically, what happens is next time we'll talk about how, he decided, no, I'm not sending you down. But then, because the famine just keeps going on, like it says, they eat up the corn, and then he has to go back to Egypt. And Judah speaks up that time saying, hey, we can't go back without Benjamin. So we're going to see what happens, right? They're going to go back with Benjamin to try to rescue Simeon, but also just to get grain so they all don't die. What's the point of preserving, Jacob's going to find what's the point of not sending Benjamin when he may die if we don't get food? So he will send his son, and the story will unfold as it. I don't know what to say because I don't know how to make this mysterious. I feel like I know way too much what's going on. I think most of you do too. But we're here for other reasons. We're here to just rehearse and to repeat these things in our minds, and to become more familiar with what God has revealed to us through his word. So thanks for joining me in this study. I look forward to being back tomorrow. We're going to begin at chapter 43. Hopefully we'll have a nice week of streaming and everything will be cool. It's very nice to have my usual equipment working. So until next time, here we go.
Sing unto Yahweh a new song, and his praise to the ends of the earth. Ye that go down to the sea, and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof, let the wilderness and the cities thereof lift up their voice. The villages that Kedar doth inhabit, let the inhabitants of the rocks sing. Let them shout from the top of the mountains. Let them give glory to Yahweh and declare his praise in the islands. Yahweh shall go forth as a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry a roar. He shall prevail against his enemies.